Hey guys, so we are reacting um his his story and the other story clones of his story in this video. So get ready.
Neat restaurant and felt like crying. I'd spent my life savings and trained for 5 years in culinary school, but 7 days in my dining hall was empty. The Kung Pao chicken I'd spent years perfecting sat untouched, and I dropped to my knees. But then, a 300-pound man walked in. He grabbed one of everything, and my face lit up because I finally had a real customer. But then I looked closer, and instantly got ready to fight him. He was adding his own herbs and spices to my food. I instantly stormed over and asked why he was changing my Kung Pao, but he stared at me like it was obvious. Because your original recipe tastes like dog shit left to bake in the sun, but with a few tweaks of my own, it's delicious. My jaw dropped, and I went to escort him out, but he shoved a spoon of my own dish into my mouth before I could say a word. I nearly gagged, and my hands shook in horror because I realized the recipe I'd worked on for so long was actually a crime against taste buds. Now try mine. He shoved a second spoon in my mouth, and my eyes glowed like in that one Ratatouille scene. This is incredible. I know. He walked to the entrance door, flipping the sign around to closed. We're turning this restaurant around. For the next 5 hours, I watched him refry my wings, re-season my fish, cross entire items off the menu, and call the recipes I'd spent 2 years on prison food. When he was done, I asked him if he was a chef, but he just twirled his fork. Nah, I'm just a fat guy who loves food. The next morning, I opened the restaurant, and at lunch, I watched my second ever customer take a bite of the Kung Pao. He nearly fell out of his chair and immediately went back for more. That evening, my restaurant was full, and Joe stood in my kitchen, eating the Kung Pao chicken, now as my head chef and co-owner of the restaurant. He saved my business, so giving him half was the least I could do. I was stuffing my trash bag into the chute when my fat landlord appeared out of nowhere. All garbage must be triple bagged. You will be fined $400 per bag. I crossed my arms because we both knew that was BS, and I knew exactly why he was targeting me. You've been writing me up every week since my girlfriend Amelia moved in, and she tells me you check her out all the time. You're being petty and jealous, so I'm not paying a dime. He clicked his pen. We're up to a $500 fine. Arguing with management is a violation. I laughed because I wasn't about to let myself be intimidated by a man built like Danny DeVito. But he turned red, slammed the trash room door open, and pointed at my apartment door. That's an unapproved doormat. $200 fine. The $1,400 payment is due next week. I locked eyes with him and started throwing the trash bags down the chute. Oops, forgot to triple bag them. Oh well. He snapped the pad shut and stomped his foot on the floor. You know what? Amelia doesn't deserve you. I took out my phone. Oh really? I had no idea. I'll let her know right now. I called her to come to the trash room, and as soon as she walked in, the fat man started sweating nervously. Greetings, Miss Amelia. Her hand interlocked with mine. What's going on, babe? I spoke nonchalantly. The landlord is fining us $1,900 for not triple bagging our garbage bags and for having an unregistered doormat. He thinks you're not good enough for me. What do you think, babe? The fat man tugged at his collar, and Amelia tilted her head. Wait, I know you. You're the guy who takes the treadmill next to mine when the whole gym is empty. I see you everywhere. I told you to leave me alone. She jabbed a finger at him. You're a creep. The Oompa Loompa looked so angry I thought smoke was going to come out of his ears. Everything doubles. $3,800 fine. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. We can't afford that. For the first time all day, I stopped finding the situation funny, but he smiled at her, crying. Should have thought about that before you rejected me. Amelia wiped her face and walked at him with her fists clenched. He backpedaled and tripped on a piece of trash, and as he stumbled backwards, I reached past his shoulder and pulled the flap open. He caught the frame and his chubby legs kicked over the drop, and as he fell, I leaned into the shaft. Should have triple bagged yourself. That's a $400 fine. I guess we're even. I slammed the flap shut like I was closing his file. As we walked out, I was already looking for a new place to live. Worth it. I was stuffing my trash. I was sitting alone in class when I noticed the hamster cage was hanging wide open. The weird kid Dex had taken Peanut out of her cage and was squeezing her in his fist. He grinned at me. You're the hamster monitor for today, right? It's your job to keep this thing safe. I nodded at him. Then he said it out loud, so there'd be no confusion. Class policy says whoever loses her walks the whole school in their underwear. I gasped, because he was right. I needed to get Peanut back into her cage before the rest of the class returned from lunch, or I'd be stuck in my underwear while everyone laughed at me. I told him to put her back, but he stepped up on a desk where I couldn't reach. I lunged anyway, and he swung her out over the aisle. Her legs dangled in the air, and she screamed for help. So I stopped grabbing and started begging. Dex, please let her down. Peanut is pregnant with 3 little hamster babies. But his smirk just got even bigger. He held the hamster over his open mouth. I wonder how a hamster tastes. I froze and thought Peanut's fate was to be eaten by this gremlin. But that's when the door swung wide open. Lunch had ended, and every student had returned, only to see Dex holding the class hamster over his open mouth. The teacher screamed screamed, "Dex, what are you doing?" And it was so loud that Dex accidentally dropped the hamster. Peanut flipped in the air and landed right inside Dex's open mouth. Everyone's jaw dropped, and I screamed, "No!" Dex started choking hard. His foot slid off the desk, but as he hit the floor, Peanut popped out of his mouth like a vending machine. I dove forward and caught her in both hands, soaked but kicking and alive. I carefully set her back in the nest and clicked the latch, safe and sound. But then she curled up and clenched her stomach. Wait, Peanut is giving birth. The whole class stampeded over Dex to crowd the glass and watched Peanut pump out 3 cute babies. The next day, Dex walked in his underwear while everyone laughed and took pictures. I was sitting alone in class when I noticed the hamster cage was hanging wide open.
That was interesting.
Yo, Slurpee, why don't you check out
hanging. I was stuffing my trash bag into the chute when my fat landlord appeared out of nowhere. All guard court when I stood up and said, "Your Honor, my client is definitely guilty." The courtroom erupted in laughter. Someone yelled, "What is this lawyer saying?" And my client's head snapped towards me. I was sweating buckets because there was only one explanation. That morning, my stupid son had blown out his birthday candles and wished for just one thing. My dad can't lie for the whole day. And now, because of that stupid wish, I was going to lose this case and end up jobless unless I somehow saved my reputation. The judge leaned forward. "Counselor, would you like to rephrase that?" I opened my mouth to fix it, but what came out was, "No, Your Honor, he did all of it." My client yanked my sleeve and whispered, "Fix this, or else." My jaw clenched harder and harder every second. But then I got a brilliant idea. I call my own client to the stand. He walked up smiling because we'd planned to feed him easy questions. So I looked him in the eye and asked the first question, "Where were you that night?" He leaned into the mic all relaxed. "At home, sleeping, like I told the cops." But my mouth suddenly interrupted. "No, you weren't. You told me you were at the jewelry store where the robbery took place." The courtroom laughed again, and he gripped the stand. "Whose side are you on? Yours. That's the sad part." I clamped both hands over my mouth, and tears fell through my eyes. I leaned in for my last question. "You cracked that vault in 4 minutes all by yourself, right?" That's when my client shocked everyone and shot up so fast his chair flipped. 4? No, that's wrong. 3 minutes. I cracked the vault in 3 minutes. Put some respect on my name. The whole courtroom froze, and even the judge's mouth fell open. My client slapped a hand over his own mouth. That's when it hit me. My son's wish had somehow rubbed off on him. The officers grabbed him, and as they dragged him out, he yelled, "It was a Class 4 vault. Put that in the record." The doors slammed, and the judge slowly took off his glasses and looked right at me. In 30 years, I've never known anyone pull the truth out of a man like that. I stood in the middle of my all-you-can-eat restaurant and felt like crying. I'd spent my life. I asked my dad, "What are you getting me for my 18th birthday?" And he smiled. That day's still far away, so I forgot all about it. But on my 18th birthday, I suddenly fainted. My dad rushed me to the hospital where the doctor said, "Your child has a hole in his heart." Dad broke down crying, and I was sure I was going to die. But an hour later, he came into my room saying, "It's a miracle, son. The doctors have a donor ready." So they wheeled me into surgery. When I woke up, there was a letter on my bed from my dad. But as I read it, I started crying. "Son, if you're reading this, it means everything went well. Remember when you asked what I was getting you for your 18th birthday? Back then, I didn't know what to say. Now you know. I gave you my heart." I asked my dad. I was on a public bus with my daughter when a man in a black ski mask stood up, pointed a gun at all of us, and screamed, "Everybody put your phones in the bag, now!" I yanked my daughter against my chest, ready to do anything to keep her safe. But my teenage daughter clutched her phone in its bulky pink case to her chest, shaking her head. "I can't live without my phone, Dad. I'm not giving it to him." My heart stopped. I grabbed her arm and begged, "Your life is worth more than a phone. You have to give it to him." But I knew how stubborn she was, and I was terrified she'd get herself killed. The robber stormed down the aisle, shoving his bag in each row, and phones dropped in one by one. But a man near the front clutched his phone and shook his head. "No, bruh, my whole life's on this thing." The robber grabbed his collar, but the man swung back, and they slammed into the seats, the gun swinging wildly as they grappled. "You're going to get us all killed!" someone screamed from the back. Then a shot cracked through the bus, the bullet punching a hole through the roof, and everyone ducked. I threw myself over my daughter, shielding her with my body, but underneath me, I felt her hands moving frantically over her phone like she was protecting it, and my heart sank because I knew she was still refusing to give it up. "Please," I begged into her ear, "just hand it over. I can't lose you." Then sirens wailed in the distance, and the robber's head snapped toward the window, his grip on the gun tightening as he ripped the fighting man's phone away and stormed toward us. The gun swung toward my daughter. "Phone in the bag, now." I was bracing for the worst, but my daughter slowly lifted her bright pink phone and dropped it into his bag. Relief crashed over me as the sirens screamed closer, and the robber bolted for the door, but he didn't make it 3 steps before cops tackled him to the pavement. But then my daughter grabbed my arm. "Dad, look!" She opened her palm, and there sat her phone, glowing, out of its bright pink case. I gave him the empty pink case, Dad. "I've been texting 911 while you were shielding me." My jaw dropped, because the phone she swore she couldn't live without was the only reason any of us were still breathing. I was on. When my history teacher accidentally taught us about cavemen, Kevin, the dumbest kid in class, immediately shot up. "Is it true that cavemen invented fire?" The teacher nodded. "We should all appreciate it." Kevin cackled and rubbed his hands together like an evil fly, and none of us were prepared for what he had up his sleeve. The next afternoon, we were back in the same seats when dark smoke filled the hallways. The intercom crackled. "Fire in the building. All students evacuate immediately. This is not a drill." The fire alarm screamed, and Kevin smiled at the ceiling and rubbed his hands together. As we walked out, I turned to him. "Bro, did you cause this?" He nodded like I was the dumbest kid in the school. "Duh, you heard teach. Fire's the most important thing that ever happened. I'm showing her I appreciate it, and then she'll finally let me pass her class." A girl up front shrieked, "You could have killed all of us." But before Kevin could respond, sprinklers went off over our heads, and I just hoped the principal would expel him so Kevin could never hurt us again. But when we made it to the front lawn, and I explained to the principal what Kevin did, he walked past Kevin and stormed right over to the teacher. "How could you be so reckless? You stood in front of a boy who is stupid enough to eat glue for lunch and told him to appreciate fire." He straightened his tie. "We're not pressing charges," Kevin cheered. "Does that mean I passed the class?" The principal sighed. "Yes, Kevin. Yes, it does." When my history teacher The school bully kicked down a 6'9" freshman, and when his tray fell, he picked up the spaghetti and squeezed it over his head. The best part about this is you can't do crap about it, Giraffe. But this freshman towered over him and said, "What did you just say to me?" The entire cafeteria went silent because no one had ever stood up to Logan. Logan smirked. "Be careful what you say next, circus freak. My dad practically owns this school." But the new kid just smirked. "Oh yeah, what's his name?" He puffed his chest out. "John Donaldson." The new kid chuckled. "His boss's name is Liam McManus, right?" "I know because that's my dad's name." For a second, Logan didn't say anything, and all of us had our mouths wide open because no one had ever seen him be quiet before. The new kid leaned in and whispered, "By the way, my dad says yours is a little bitch, like father, like son." He suddenly went red with anger and started crashing out. "How effing dare you!" The kid's hand closed over Logan's whole head, and he lifted him in the air like it was nothing. Logan started kicking at nothing. "Put me down!" The new kid smiled, and while still carrying Logan, he crouched down to the tray of spaghetti on the floor, picked it up, and smeared it on Logan's face. Logan kept kicking while being suspended in the air, and his sweatpants fell to his ankles to reveal SpongeBob boxers. Every kid Logan had ever bullied was now laughing at him with their phones out. The new kid smiled. "The best part about this is you can't do crap about it, little man." The school bully, me and my boys cornered our art teacher. "Can you take us?" The school bully kicked down a sick. Me and my boys cornered our art teacher. "Can you take us to see Obsession, Mr. Bell?" He shook his head. "It's rated R. You're 14. And my boys all glanced at me, but I mouthed, "Check me out." I stared at Mr. Bell. The rumors were right. The history teacher, Mr. Flaherty, is cooler than you. Mr. Bell stood up so fast, he almost fell. "Now hold on a second." He took out his phone and instantly started scrolling AMC showtimes. I grinned at my boys because he'd do anything we wanted, as long as we called him uncool right after. Keon tested it next. "Yo, Mr. Bell, can you get us a hotel room before the movie? I want to chill." Mr. Bell laughed. "Nice try, kid." He was already turning back to his desk when I crossed my arms and rolled my eyes. "I knew you weren't as cool as Mr. Flaherty." His eyes immediately widened. "Now hold on a second." An hour later, we were at a 5-star hotel, and he was swiping his credit card to pay for us all to have a deluxe suite. We knew this could only end badly, but we were too excited to care. And at 8 p.m., we rolled into the theater smelling like garlic butter, and Mr. Bell strutted to the counter. 5 for Obsession. I'm their guardian. We all silently dapped each other up, but then Keon grabbed my arm and pointed at the concession stand. It was Mr. Flaherty, the history teacher, aka our art teacher's arch nemesis. He stood in a huddle of his third period kids, swiping his card under a tower of popcorn buckets. I gasped because I realized he was being manipulated the same way we were manipulating Mr. Bell. When Flaherty saw Mr. Bell, he turned to the kids. "Get whatever you want, and let's upgrade our chairs to recliners, just cause I'm cool like that." We all leaned in, biting our nails, waiting to see what would happen next. Bell clenched his fists and bought the row behind us so nobody could kick our chairs. Nobody had called anyone uncool, and nobody needed to anymore. They were out-cooling each other on their own, and we were the scoreboard. Eventually, they both bought out the entire cinema room, and when we walked in, I sank into my recliner behind a mountain of snacks and leaned over to Keon. "I told you the history teacher was cooler." 3 seats down, Mr. Bell's head whipped around. "Now hold on a second." Me and my boys cornered My girlfriend stood in my doorway holding my laptop open. "So when were you planning to tell me about your other Twitch account?" On the screen was my face, my name, and a profile I had never made. She clicked through messages from girls calling me cute, and every heart emoji made me look guiltier. "I don't stream," I said. She turned the laptop toward me. "Apparently you do." Then she stepped back from me. "I'm not dating someone who flirts with
other
girls behind my
girls.
back." She opened the payment history, and my profile picture showed up beside tips sent to the same streamers again and again. The
Yeah.
comments were worse, asking girls to say my username, calling them pretty, promising to come back to their stream.